Yo, what's going on, guys? King here. In today's video, I want to take you through a cosmetic build guide to help you create your very own Raven Guard Eliminator veteran for the sniper class here in Space Marine 2. We're going to cover everything from armor pieces to chapter and heraldry markings, as well as weapon choices and weapon skins. At the end of the video, we're also going to go through some concept art from Games Workshop to make sure we have a lore-accurate version of what a Raven Guard Eliminator veteran would look like here in Space Marine 2. But first, a little bit of lore behind the Raven Guard, as they are a very unique chapter within the Adeptus Astartes. The Raven Guard are the 19th Legion of Space Marines ever created, and the Raven Guard specializes in guerrilla tactics behind enemy lines, using precisely coordinated attacks and refraining from frontal attacks. The Raven Guard are known for hitting weak points in enemy defenses and performing lightning strikes upon locations of tactical importance to cripple its enemy before battles even begin. The chapter relies heavily on their scout marines, eliminators, infiltrators, reavers as well, for pinpointing enemy positions and for reconnaissance to identify good drop sites for the rest of the chapter's forces, such as deep striking in assault marines with jump packs and terminators. So the Raven Guard are known very much so for their stealth, their reconnaissance, their ability to stay stealthy and identify enemy weak points before sending in their shock troopers, such as their jump assault marines and their terminators. So the Eliminator is a key and crucial part of the Raven Guard chapter, and we are going to jump right into the build with that. We are going to start off with the armor build, and as you can see here, I have our standard issue second company ultramarine right here. We are going to come over here and create a custom armor set, and we are going to start off with the helmet. And what I will say before we jump into the build is I'm going to show you guys a few different builds that you can use for this Raven Guard Eliminator veteran. Builds that you can use if you have the season pass and DLC packs, and also if you don't have those cosmetic packs as well. So we're going to start off with the helmet, and there are definitely a bunch of different options that you can use for a lore accurate eliminator. You can use anything from a no helmet look to a hooded no helmet look. You can use the Mark Phobos 10 standard issue, as well as the master-crafted Artificer tiers and Relic tier options for the face mask. And then there are also options that you can use in terms of things like the Survivor helmet if you want to go with more of a rough and gritty look. And then also things like the Infiltrator helmet, which are all available through playing the game and unlocking them, or the heroic store for cosmetics. Along with that, you could use versions of helmets such as the Mark 6 Corvus Veteran. This is a great option with the laurels. It definitely matches the Raven Guard style, as the Corvus helmet, the Mark 6 Corvus helmet, is directly derived from the Raven Guard. So this is a great option for veteran status. And then if you did want to move into DLC type helmets, the ones I would definitely recommend are the Mark 6 Corvus with the Raven Guard chapter insignia on the front, as well as the Mark 6 Corvus without any sort of insignias. You could also use the Mark 10 Bionic Eye and the Mark 10 Imperial Fist with a Bionic Eye, as well, as these are very Eliminator type looking helmets. They have that Bionic Eye, sort of those optics to help with the sniper eliminator look. So these are all great options. For this first build, we are going to start off with the Mark 6 Corvus with the Raven Guard logo. This is going to be a great option for us. In terms of pauldrons, for the left pauldron, again, we have a lot of great options that we can use for this, being the Mark 10 Phobos standard issue, master-crafted, Artificer tier, and Relic tier left pauldrons. A lot of these left pauldrons are going to look the same, so it's completely up to you what you want to choose. for this type of build. The other option we also have is the Mark 6 Corvus left pauldron right here, which doesn't have any sort of trim, which again is a great option for us to use as it is very low profile. This is going to be a DLC option with the Raven Guard cosmetic pack. So we are going to start off with this one. For the right pauldron, we also have the option to use a Mark 10 Phobos right pauldron like this with no trim, as well as the Artificer and Relic tier. You could also use the Prestige Relic tier pauldrons like these right here, as well as some other options like the Camellia Line Shroud, okay? This one is a great option because it does give us a very low profile look. Again, it matches the Camellia Line Shroud of the Sniper War Gear. The only reason I wouldn't recommend this is because it does create this gapping here on the Sniper model character, which to me doesn't look that sleek and smooth. It looks too separated. If they were combined, I could see it then looking a lot better. But it is definitely an option you can use for this type of build because of the shrouded look. The other option after that is the Mark 6 Corvus right pauldron to match the left pauldron. This one is really great for the Raven Guard specifically and their lore accuracy because of the Raven Guard cosmetics along with this. So I'm going to recommend this one for the best overall look. So we're going to go with that. In terms of the breastplate, we have a bunch of different options as well. Mark 10 Phobos standard issue, Mastercrafted, Artificer tiers, and I would say this relic tier, the last relic tier one, I wouldn't recommend this relic tier with the red ropes across the front, as this is more along the lines of something an Ultramarine would wear. It has that Roman Greco ropes that are very Ultramarine-esque, and go with the Ultramarine aesthetic versus the Raven Guard. So I would recommend the one with the grenades on the front, as this one is going to look, you know, in line with a low-profile Eliminator stealthy type individual, versus this one, which is more ordained. It would go with something more so along the lines of the Ultramarines. Along with that, you could also go with the Mark 10 Skull. I think this one is a great option as well. I wouldn't recommend the 3 Skull version, as that one is just a little bit too over the top. It doesn't really match the Raven Guard aesthetic. The single skull would match the Raven Guard aesthetic more so. And then the best breastplate overall by far is going to be the Mark 6 Corvus Raven Guard. So for the best build overall, I'm going to go with this one. And then for the backpack, we want to choose something that's going to be very low profile for an Eliminator veteran. So you could go with Mark 10 Phobos standard issue, you could go with Mastercrafted version, or I would recommend this Artificer tier version. I wouldn't recommend the Relic tier versions, as they have chains, and these are more so in line with something like a Black Templar, very chained up look, even a Dark Angel. Very chained up look. I'm going to go with something that's going to be very low profile and not draw much attention to the individual, as that's what the Raven Guard aesthetic is. Very low profile, stealthy, and not wanting to be seen. So the Mark 10 Phobos Artificer tier with this skull and cross swords on the back is going to be my choice. And then in terms of the war gear, so we have a bunch of different options, but I'm going to dive into the war gear and the capes a little bit later on in some other builds, because with this specific build, due to the right shoulder pad, any cape that you use, any cloak that you use is going to cause clipping on that right shoulder, which is not what we want. Okay, so if you were to use this specific build, you could go with something like the standard issue Camellia Line Cloak. You could also go with the Prestige 4 Relic tier Camellia Line Cloak, but this one doesn't really match the look of a Raven Guard Infiltrator because of the tan background of this cape, versus something like the standard issue or the Mastercrafted or Artificer tier cloaks. So for this first build, we're going to go with the standard issue because it keeps those shoulder pauldrons visible. And then to move into the gauntlets, for the left gauntlet, we are going to go with something, again, that's a little bit more low profile. So you could go standard issue Mark 10 Phobos. You could go Artificer tier like this. You could also go relic tier with the wrist guard and like the scanner on the wrist. But again, we want to create something very low profile, so we're going to go with the Artificer tier left gauntlet. You could also go with the DLC Salamander's Champion Relic tier left gauntlet, as this one doesn't have any sort of salamander markings on it. It just has a scanner or like a little Auspex type of scanner on it. So you could go with this one. But for this build, this first one, we're going to go with a very low profile left gauntlet like this. For the right gauntlet, same thing. We want to go very low profile, but we have way more options on the right than the left. So you could go standard issue, mastercrafted version, artificer tier with a purity seal, or with the bolt bullets like this. You could also go with a robotic arm or the relic tier bolt bullets like this. You could even go as far as using the double Aquila glove, but to me this doesn't really match the Raven Guard versus something like the White Scars, where White Scars would use this type of glove on their, within their aesthetic. So I'm actually going to go with the Mark 10 Phobos relic tier with the bolts that are lined up in a straight line. This one looks really great and is very low profile for a Raven Guard type model. And then for the greaves, so for the left greave, we want to go with something very low profile. So Mark 10 Phobos standard issue, you could go with mastercrafted artificer tier like these with small purity seals. I wouldn't recommend the relic tier versions because of this laurel on the bottom. That again is more so matching with like a Roman Greco type look of the Ultramarines versus the low profile of the Raven Guard. So I'm going to go with a very basic artificer tier right here. This one is very low profile, doesn't have any purity seals or anything like that, so really good look there. And then for the right greave, you could go with a bunch of different options as well. Standard issue, artificer tier to match the left, artificer tier with the knee pad, and then also relic tier with the skull or relic tier with the knee pad as well. For this one, I'm actually going to go with the matching artificer tier on the right to match the left. If you wanted to go with the knee padded version, you definitely could do that. But I want to leave this open for any sort of heraldry marks that we want to put on the model later on. So that's what I'm going to go with there. So that's going to be the actual armor build so far for our Raven Guard Eliminator Veteran. Let's go over to the chapter and heraldry markings and create a custom chapter and heraldry set. So the first thing I do want to note with this build is you could very easily start off this build with the preset Raven Guard heraldry and color palette. So you could go directly with this one as a great start to your Raven Guard Eliminator Veteran, but we are going to make a lot of specific changes. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to go here and create a custom chapter armor pattern. And the base color that we're going to want to use for this entire model is actually going to be Nuln Oil. So the main color and the secondary color are mainly going to be Nuln Oil. The tertiary colors that we're going to focus on are going to be White Scar, okay? So for this first color, we want to go with Nuln Oil. That's going to give us that matte black, low profile Raven Guard look. Secondary color is also going to be that Nuln Oil. And then we are going to go with the tertiary color being Corax White or White Scar on some of the color palette options. So Corax White for that one. In terms of the actual lens color, there are a few different options. You could go with a very traditional Mephiston red. You could also go with a Warpstone glow, which I will show on another model moving forward with some of the sniper helmet options that have like the scanner or the eye guards that have multiple lenses. So this would be a great option as well for that. But for this one, we're going to start off with the Mephiston red, as that's very traditional for Raven Guard. For the backpack, same thing. We want to have that known oil base color, and then secondary color is going to be known oil as well. For the breastplate, same thing. We want to go with known oil base, secondary color going to be known oil as well. And then that tertiary color is going to be Corax white for the Aquila. For the cloth color, we don't have any cloth color for this, so you can leave this as Wraithbone. And then for the left pauldron, we are going to want to go again with that known oil as the main color. And we're going to want to change this chapter insignia to our Raven Guard chapter insignia right here. So this is going to be our Raven Guard icon. And we are going to leave that as white scar. So that's going to be, that white scar color. For the right pauldron, same sort of thing. We want to have that base color as known oil, and then that tertiary color as Corax white to match this these shoulder pauldrons. And what you want to note about the Raven Guard is with the Raven Guard, and when we go to look at some of the concept art and also the codex rules for coloring for the Raven Guard, is sometimes Marines will have their trim of their shoulder be a different color, whether that be red or gold or white, to signify their company marking. They also sometimes will have a completely white pauldron on both sides or one side, and then the actual Raven Guard insignia will be black, which can identify veteran status, so veteran sergeant status or just overall veteran status of a Marine within the Raven Guard. So I'm going to show you some different color palette options when we get there. In terms of the gauntlets, again, we're going to go with the known oil on the hand and on the gauntlet itself. And then the same thing on the right. For this tertiary color right here, we are also going to make that Corvus black just to match. And then for the greaves, we are going to make these as well known oil. And then we're going to make this Corvus black as that tertiary color. Same thing on both greaves. Okay. So from here, what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to use some specific heraldry markings for the Raven Guard. So within the Raven Guard, the number one thing to do is you are going to want to put the high Gothic number of whatever squad that Raven Guard Eliminator is part of on their left knee pad, specifically on their left knee pad. So if they're the first squad, second squad, third squad, whatever that may be, all the way up to 10, you can do that with this high Gothic marking. That is part of the Raven Guard DLC, but it is going to give the most lore accurate look. So for this one, we're going to do number 8, just because he'll be in the 8th squad, and you're going to want to leave that color as white scar and the main color, the decal color, as transparent. Okay? So this is going to be a very basic Eliminator veteran look, as you have the white, to signify that they are a veteran, you have the white insignia on the actual right pauldron right here. The right pauldron for the Raven Guard is going to be the pauldron that signifies both their company marking specifically and also majority of the time their veteran status. So this is going to have, or this is going to create a very basic Eliminator veteran look, okay? Now, to make this even more of a veteran, there are a few things that we can change. So this is going to now dive into some of those additional builds. The first thing that you can change to make them more of a veteran or give them more veteran status is changing the helmet color. So to change the helmet color, we are going to want to actually change this to white scar. Okay, so you're going to change that primary and that secondary color to white scar, and you're actually going to change the tertiary color to Corvus black. Okay, so this would typically indicate a veteran sergeant within the Raven Guard. You're going to leave the lens colors Mephiston red, but then, like I stated previously, if you wanted to make them even more of a veteran, you can change the pauldron color to match. So you can change this to white scar as the main color, and then the actual company marking would then be that, let's see if they have Corvus Black. It looks like the only other one is going to be Abaddon Black right here for the actual chapter marking. So you're going to want to make that Abaddon Black. And then on the other pauldron, you can do the same thing. White pauldron with then a black actual chapter or company marking. So that's going to be Corvus Black right there. So this, again, is going to even further identify them as a veteran within the Raven Guard. The last thing that you can do to make them a veteran or show and signify their veteran status is going to actually be changing the gauntlets of this Marine to that white scar color. So something just like this. So this even further creates that veteran status for our Raven Guard Eliminator veteran, okay? And this is very lore accurate to how the Raven Guard actually depict their veterans within the company, especially first company veterans as well. So as an Eliminator, this would be considered a veteran sergeant of the first company. First company is typically going to be the highest level of veterans within any sort of chapter. But again, this is a really, really great lore accurate look for a Eliminator veteran of the Raven Guard. The last color palette sort of option that you could create to still keep this lore accurate but make them or give them that veteran status is if you wanted to keep the pauldrons that original known oil color and the white scar for the actual Raven Guard insignia, and then also known oil here and Corax white for this. So this too again works to signify veteran status of a Raven Guard Eliminator. So this would be like the third color palette option for this type of Marine. Okay? So all three of those color palette options work to create an Eliminator veteran. Let's actually jump back to the armor pieces and create another build to give you a sense of what other options there are in terms of making this a lore accurate Eliminator veteran. So the second armor build that we could use, say if you didn't have the DLC packs, would be something along the lines of using, the Mark 10 Phobos Artificer tier with the visor with 3 lenses right there. That works as well. You could also go in here and use some specific pauldrons right here. Like if you wanted to keep this Mark 10 Phobos standard issue, and then you wanted to keep this Mark 10 Phobos right here, or if you wanted the matching pauldron or a similar pauldron on the right, you could definitely do that as well. It might even be better if we use, a little bit of a higher tier pauldron. So if we wanted to use Mark 10 Phobos Artificer tier, and then we wanted to use the matching pauldron on the right, you just want to make sure they kind of match up in terms of actual pauldron style. And then if we wanted to even change the chest piece to something that's, not part of the DLC pack, you could do that as well. So this would be another version, and this is using 0 DLC options, and then we would just have to go in and sort of change the color palette a little bit for this specific character right here. So we would change this to that Corax white trim. So this would be, again, an Eliminator veteran. And you could even change the battle line icon. So you could have a veteran icon right here. You could have a battle line, or you could have a fire support icon. All of these work for an Eliminator. But having the Raven Guard icon on the right pauldron too works just as good. And you could even use, some of these specific icons from the Raven Guard DLC pack if you wanted to use the DLC pack. Like a veteran icon like this, or a veteran icon like this. all of those work as well. But actually having the specific Raven Guard icon works great too. So this would still work again as a Raven Guard Eliminator veteran. And if we wanted to even make this a little bit more lore accurate, we could have something like this, fire support icon. Just like that. And then the one thing I would change on this to make them even more of an eliminator is going to be that war gear piece. Like I mentioned before, the war gear only really works well on the pauldrons that are included outside of the DLC pack that don't cause any clipping. So for this one, best options would be something like this master-crafted Camellia Line cloak, or this Artificer tier Camellia Line cloak, this Artificer tier Camellia Line cloak right here, or even this one right here, this Relic tier. But really the Relic tier one looks more of something like a Captain. So I would recommend these three, the Mastercrafted version, the Artificer tiers, those work great as well. So even something like this. So let's take a look at that in full. Now this would be without using any of the DLC packs for the Raven Guard. But if we were to combine everything and make a third version, here's what we would do. So if we really wanted to make a third version of this, we could leave that Mark 10 Phobos Artificer tier helmet. We could change the breastplate to the actual Raven Guard Aquila. And then this even more so creates that very lore accurate type look for a Raven Guard Eliminator. Using the Corax white on the gauntlets, on the actual chest piece and the Aquila, and then the high Gothic numeral on the left knee pad. So all three of those are super great options for, you know, the Raven Guard Eliminator veteran. Even using this Mark 6 Corvus veteran helmet, this looks great as well. And even if we wanted to change up, you know, something like this and make it like that. So all of these options work really, really great. As you can see, you have multiple different options to create that Raven Guard Eliminator veteran look using both the non-DLC options and the DLC options for this character. So let's even add on, you know, something like this. And now that's a very low profile Raven Guard Eliminator veteran look. Okay, so that's going to be the armor and the chapter and heraldry markings. Let's dive into the weapon choices and weapon skins that are going to be really viable for this type of character, you know, based off the tabletop. And you know, looking into the actual data sheet for the Eliminator squad for the tabletop Games Workshop Warhammer 40k data sheets, the Eliminator squad has a few different options as in terms of weapon choices. So if we're taking a look at the primary weapon here, the data sheet lists that the Eliminator squad can use weapons such as the Instigator Bolt Carbine, the Bolt Sniper Rifle, and the Las Fusil. Now in Space Marine 2, we obviously have options to use the Stalker Bolt Rifle and the Bolt Carbine as well. So I would say, you know, any of these weapons are really going to work for an Eliminator veteran. But if you really wanted to go lore accurate off of the data sheet, the three weapons to use would be the Instigator Bolt Carbine, the Bolt Sniper Rifle, and the Las Fusil, as well as for secondary weapons would be the Bolt Pistol. And then you only have the single melee weapon for the sniper class here in Space Marine 2. But in terms of weapon skins, the best options to create, again, that low profile look that we're looking for would be the master crafted variants of these weapons. So master crafted alpha, master crafted beta. Same thing for the bolt sniper rifle, master crafted alpha, master crafted beta. Okay. And then same thing for the las fusel, master crafted alpha, master crafted beta. Those are by far going to be the best look for the primary weapons. Along with that, same thing for the bolt pistol. For this Raven Guard Eliminator Veteran, I would say the bolt pistol and heavy bolt pistol are really great to use in terms of lore accuracy. The data sheet says the bolt pistol is the only weapon that they specifically use. So master crafted alpha and master crafted beta, those are the ones I would recommend. And then in terms of the melee weapon, you could really use any melee weapon of your choice, whether that be, you know, the combat knife in standard issue, master crafted version. You could use a Drogo's Reclamation. You could use Salvation of Baka. All four of those create a very low profile look. You could even use the Relic Tier Blood of Vossas, Ophelian Liberation Alpha, and even the Battle Worn Blade with the little Tyrannid Fang on the bottom. All of these are going to be great options for you to use for your Eliminator Veteran. You could even use the Power Gladius variant Heroic Combat Knife. That would work completely fine with this build as well and still give that lore accurate look to your character. But by far, the master crafted versions of these weapons are going to give the most lore accurate look to this character. And for the bolt sniper rifle, you could even use the wrapped bolt sniper rifle. This would give a really awesome look to your Eliminator Veteran as well. So that is one to consider as well. So that's going to be the full build for our Raven Guard Eliminator Veteran. Let's take a look at some of the concept art from Games Workshop to see how we did in terms of lore accuracy for this character. Okay, so let's take a look at what is currently available from Games Workshop in terms of concept art to see how we did in terms of lore accuracy for our Raven Guard Eliminator Veteran. So I'm here on the warhammer.com page, and when you actually search Raven Guard, they don't actually have too much available to show painted models by the GW staff, at least, for what a Raven Guard should look like. The best examples by far are going to be Caven Shrike right here and Eothon Shan, the chapter master of the Raven Guard. But we're going to use those models in a different video when we go to create some different characters for the Raven Guard. So I actually went over to the Warhammer community page, and they actually showcased a Raven Guard chapter right here that was painted by a Warhammer community member that really shows off some great lore accuracy for the first company of the Raven Guard. So you can see here, this is the entire battle force that they have. They have everything from Eothon Shan. They have a captain in Phobos armor. They have a librarian in Terminator armor, Terminator squad, Stern Guard veterans, a captain in Terminator armor, as well as Infernus Marines. They have Gravis Marines right here with heavy bolt rifles. They have Jump Assault Marines, Dreadnoughts, Caven Shrike, Apothecary, Captain in Gravis armor, and then they also have Eliminators. So when we actually take a look at the Eliminators that they painted, we can see here that the Raven Guard Eliminators are painted in such a way that keep them extremely low profile, and you really dive into that stealth component that the Raven Guard uses in their battle doctrine, their combat doctrine. So as you can see here, the biggest thing to notice is that Camellia line cape that covers the front portion and the back, and even with a hood as well. They use the white helmet piece here to symbolize that this is a sergeant or a veteran sergeant of this Eliminator squad. And then they have that visor piece like we showed in the cosmetic build that you can use as a really great representation for your Raven Guard Eliminator veteran. Now, they don't utilize the white gauntlets like we showcased in our cosmetic build, but that may just be because they want to create that low profile for their eliminators. As you can see, again, they use the bolt sniper rifle in that master crafted armor or weapon skin, so that would be the best recommendation that I can give for that. And they have the squad marking right here being the 8th squad of that first company on the left knee pad. So the left knee pad is where you're going to want to utilize that high gothic marking. And again, just very low profile, very stealthy. That's what the eliminators are known for. Here's the actual codex rules. And the Raven Guard are a codex compliant chapter, so they utilize the Codex Astartes for their chapter and heraldry markings. But the biggest thing to take away from this, by far, is right here. The Raven Guard display which company a battle brother belongs to by painting the edge of one pauldron, usually the right, with that company's heraldic color. So in this example, they use an infiltrator, and they say, this brother's an infiltrator. This warrior belongs to the 3rd squad of the 3rd company and has deployed in Phobos pattern armor. So 3rd company being red trim. 3rd squad being that left knee pauldron with the high gothic 3rd marking. Okay. And then they have a battle line icon on the right pauldron. But if you were to look at the actual Primaris Tactical Marine, they would have the trim on the right, and then same thing, the high gothic marking on the left knee pad. And with these codex rules, veterans are displayed with white trim on their shoulder pads. So for our Eliminator veteran, we use the white trim on both shoulder pads. You could use one or the other, specifically, especially if it's in Phobos pattern armor, which our sniper, our Eliminator was. And then for veteran sergeants and captains, they use the white helmet as well. For standard veterans, they would use a black helmet, but you could also use that standard white helmet for a standard veteran as well. So the thing about the heraldry for the Raven Guard is it's very fluid. It's very fluid. So there are many different things that you can do with the heraldry markings that still make that character veteran status, whether that be through heraldry markings or white helmets or white gauntlets, white shoulders. And a great example of that is within the showcase here. So as an example, we have Reavers right here. We also have Assault Jump Marines right here. Stern Guard veterans, and then also infiltrators right here, and our Infernus Marines. So as we just talked about, for the Infernus Marines, on the left pauldron, they have the white trim, the white Raven Guard icon with a black base, okay? So this means their first company, he's a sergeant or a veteran sergeant with the white helmet, but he doesn't have any of the white gauntlets, okay? Same thing here with our infiltrators. For the actual Stern Guard veterans, this individual painted them in a very unique way. So I would consider it still lore accurate, but typically the trim would be a little bit of a different color. It would typically be a white color, even for those Stern Guard veterans. And then again, for the Jump Assault Marines, we have that white helmet veteran sergeant or sergeant, and then the same pauldrons and the high gothic number on the left knee pad. Now, if we really wanted to dive into, okay, where do the white gauntlets come into play? That's going to be with the chapter leadership, most likely. And as you can see here on Aethon Shan, the chapter master, he has the white gauntlets with the white shoulder pads, the white Aquila chest piece, and then a white helmet as well. Same thing with Cave and Shrike, white gauntlets, and then he has a black shoulder pad with the white Raven Guard marking, but then a white helmet as well, okay? So you can sort of see there's a theme with the Raven Guard. To depict veteran status, there are multiple different ways that you can depict it, and that's what we showed in our cosmetic build. There are multiple different ways you could depict that veteran status. Everything from having, you know, black shoulder pads with white insignias, to a white helmet, to white gauntlets, to white shoulder pads and white gauntlets. So there are many different ways that that can be depicted within the Raven Guard chapter. So any of the options that I showed today in terms of the cosmetic build would fall in line with those heraldry and veteran status rules for the Raven Guard specifically. But the biggest takeaways by far are going to be the white Aquila, the high Gothic numeral on the left knee pad, signifying their squad, and then the white helmets and gauntlets. Those by far are going to depict veteran status the best and be able to separate them from standard Marines within the Raven Guard. So what do you guys think? Did we hit the mark? Did we miss the mark with this cosmetic build? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you guys try out this cosmetic build and if you like it when you are playing as your sniper class in Space Marine 2. If you guys like this type of content, definitely make sure to like the damn video and subscribe. And I'll see all you guys in the next cosmetic build. Peace.